He cheated on me with my best friend, so I took revenge by burning his world down, sleeping with his closest friend. Now he can't stand seeing us happy together after shattering his world. I'll divorce him. I had never thought that my life could be so perfect, Joshua and I. Melissa had been married for a year and a half. In those first few months, everything felt like a dream, smooth, predictable, and filled with a warmth I thought was forever the kind of warmth where you never question the stability of your relationship because it just feels right. We had no children yet, but we often talked about our future. I thought we were building something solid, a foundation for a life that would last. What could go wrong when everything seems so perfect? But somehow, perfect isn't always as it seems. That was something I would soon learn, and the moment I realized it shattered everything I had known to be true. Was the wife's revenge justified, or did it just make things worse? Dive in. I trusted Joshua completely. He was my husband after all. We had been inseparable for the longest time. I had no reason to doubt him. It wasn't just that we were married. He was my best friend, the one I laughed with, cried with, and built a life with, no matter how hard I try. Now I can't even remember a time I questioned his loyalty. He was my rock. We had a home, a shared life, and our friends adored us. Everything was simple, easy, and fulfilling. There was, however, one person who had been in and out of our home just as much as Joshua and I. My best friend Amir. She was more than a friend to me. She was like family. I trusted her with my heart and soul just as I did Joshua. She knew everything about me, my fears, my hopes, the way I thought about the future. Our friendship had been strong since childhood, and I never once doubted that it would change what could possibly go wrong. When I had two people I believed in the most, it was a day like any other, or at least it seemed so. I was sitting at home scrolling through my phone when I received an unexpected message. It wasn't from Joshua. It wasn't from Amira either. It was from a woman I didn't know, but her message sent an icy chill down my spine. I think you need to know something about your husband. I sat there frozen for what felt like hours. My eyes glued to the screen, but the words wouldn't quite sink in. Who is this person? Why was she contacting me? And why was she insinuating something about Joshua? The message continued. I saw him with a woman at the office last week. They seem very close, if you know what I mean. I could feel my heart racing as the reality of the words began to set in. I closed my eyes trying to process it, but all I could do was stare blankly at the screen. No, it couldn't be true. Josh would never do that, but doubt had begun to creep in. And once doubt takes hold, it grows like a weed, choking everything it touches. I told myself it was a misunderstanding. A jealous colleague trying to create trouble, but something deep inside me, the kind of instinct that comes from truly knowing someone, whispered that there was something more to this. The problem was, I didn't want to believe it. I couldn't. A part of me wanted to simply ignore it, let it go. I was angry at this woman for sending me such a message, and I even thought about blocking her, but another part of me won. I didn't want to admit existed, started to wonder if there was some truth behind it. I dismissed it though, after all. Why would Joshua cheat on me? I knew him too well. We had a life together, he loved me. Yet that lingering thought didn't fade. It grew louder in my mind, gnawing at me. What if it were true? What if my perfect life wasn't so perfect? I tried to push it aside, but it consumed me the next day. I found myself unable to focus at work, replaying that message in my head over and over again. And then, just as if life had conspired to show me the truth, something unexpected happened. Amir invited me to lunch. She was her usual bubbly self, full of life and laughter. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Her eyes avoided mine more than usual. She seemed distracted. She kept checking her phone when she thought I wasn't looking, tapping on it, as if something else was on her mind that day. I was restless. The messages, the suspicion, they were taking over my thoughts. I tried to focus on the conversation with Amir, but my mind wandered, imagining things that hadn't happened. Until one moment she said something that completely shattered the illusion of normally. I think Joshua's been spending more time with someone at the office. She casually mentioned, almost as if it were an afterthought. I froze. The blood drained from my face. I couldn't breathe. I had heard those words before in that message, but hearing them come from Amir's lips felt like a slap in the face. She didn't notice my reaction. But I felt everything shift in that moment. Why would she say that? Asked myself. My mind screamed in confusion, panic. I forced a smile, trying to keep my voice steady. What do you mean? I asked, my heart racing, every word heavy in the air. Amir shrugged, not meeting my gaze. I don't know, just something I overheard. A woman came into the office while you were away last week. She was pretty close to him. She let the sentence hang in the air, as if that alone should be enough to explain everything. Something clicked in my mind, my pulse quickened. That woman, that message. It wasn't a mistake, it was real. Joshua had been seeing someone. My hand started shaking. I barely heard the rest of Amir's words. I excused myself, suddenly needing space to breathe. As I walked away from the table, all I could think was, could it be her? Could it really be her? The one person I trusted more than anyone else in the world. I needed answers, and I needed them now. But I didn't know how to ask. I didn't know how to confront the one person who had always been by my side. I had to find out the truth. No matter what it cost me, I didn't know what to think, but I couldn't ignore the gnawing feeling that had settled deep in my stomach. Walking away from Amir at lunch, I felt like I was stepping into a storm, unsure whether I would be struck by lightning or drowned by rain. My mind raced with questions, one of them ones I wanted to answer. Could Joshua really be involved with someone else? Could my best friend be part of it? I tried to push it all aside, but the doubt was like a vine spreading, choking, suffocating the life out of the peace I had once felt. I spent the next few days in a haze, my mind unable to focus on anything else. My work conversations with friends, even simple tasks, everything was clouded by suspicion. Joshua's smile, the one that used to comfort me, now felt like an enigma. I kept replaying every little detail of our life together, trying to find something that would explain this unsettling feeling, but no matter how hard I searched, nothing seemed to fit. I should have confronted him right then and there, but part of me, the part that still wanted to believe, told me I needed more than just whispers and offhand comments. I needed to know the truth, the full truth, before I could accuse anyone, so I did what I had never done before. I kept my suspicions to myself and let them grow. In silence, the more I let them fester, the clearer it became that I couldn't live with this doubt hanging over me. A few days later, I found myself standing in front of my bathroom mirror, trying to breathe through the knot of anxiety that twisted in my chest. I didn't know what was worse, the idea of confronting Joshua or the thought that I might already know the truth. My reflection stared back at me, a stranger with tired eyes, and a face that had aged in just a few days. I hardly recognized myself anymore. The nagging thought grew louder. What if Hen's really doing this? What if she's someone I trust? I didn't want to believe it, but I could shake the feeling that something was off. Joshua and I had always been honest with each other, or so I thought. But honesty, it seemed, was a fragile thing, and I had started to doubt whether he ever truly understood what it meant to me that night. I decided I needed to know, and I couldn't go on like this. Suspicion poisoning every part of me, the thought of confronting Joshua face to face, though, was unbearable, so I took the only option I felt I had left. I contacted the woman who had messaged me, the one who had stirred this whirlwind of doubt in the first place. I had no idea what to expect. Part of me feared that she was just a troublemaker, trying to tear down a happy marriage for no reason, but a much larger part of me hoped almost desperately that she would confirm the truth and free me from the pain of guessing. I sent her a message late that night. I could barely bring myself to type it, the words feeling foreign on the screen, but I knew I had to ask. I need to know everything. Who's he with? When did this happen? The response came quicker than I expected. My heart hammered in my chest as I read her words. It's not just anyone. I'm sorry, Melissa, but it's your best friend. She's been seeing him for a while now. I didn't want to be the one to tell you, but you deserve to know. I stared at the message for what felt like hours. The room spun around me, the edges of my vision blurring. The message was short, blunt, and undeniable. My best friend, it was like a punch to the gut. The air in my lungs. Vanishing, I wanted to cry, scream, do anything to release the intense surge of anger and hurt that gripped me. But all I could do was sit there paralyzed, clutching my phone like a lifeline. It didn't seem real. The words blurred together as if my brain couldn't process the enormity of what was happening. Mara, my best friend, with my husband. I threw the phone across the room, the sound of it hitting the wall barely registering. My mind couldn't focus. How had I missed it? How had I not seen the signs, the late-night phone calls, the stolen glances? Those were things I'd brushed off as nothing. I trusted her more than anyone I had called her. My sister, someone I could confide in no matter what. And now she had turned her back on me in the worst way possible for the next few days. I felt like a shell of the person I had once been every time I saw Joshua. I felt a mixture of rage and confusion bubble up inside me, his smile, the way he would touch my arm. As if nothing had changed, it made me want to scream. How could he act so normal? Didn't he know? Know that everything between us had already been broken? But I couldn't confront him yet. Part of me still hoped this was all some cruel misunderstanding, some sick joke. But as the days passed, I couldn't ignore the feeling that I already knew the truth. My stomach twisted into knots as I thought about confronting him. What could I even say? What words could possibly capture the pain I felt in that moment? Then a strange thing happened. The doubt which had been creeping like an insidious shadow suddenly took root. I no longer felt like I was questioning things. I knew that my best friend had betrayed me, that Joshua had betrayed me, and that my life had been nothing but a lie. All along, I decided it was time to face the truth, no matter how much it hurt. The night I chose to confront Joshua was one of the hardest nights of my life. I could feel the anger building inside me, but there was also a fear deep down that I couldn't quite shake. What if he denied it? What if he tried to twist things around and make me doubt my own feelings? But I knew I couldn't let him manipulate me again. This time I would demand the truth. Joshua came home late as usual. He didn't seem to notice the tension in the air, the way my hands trembled as I set the table for dinner. He smiled at me, his usual grin, warm, confident. The same smile that had once made me feel safe, but now it felt like a mask. I stood there, frozen for a moment before I spoke. Joshua. I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I know he looked at me, his expression shifting slightly. What, everything about you and Amira? His face paled for a second. He didn't say anything. I could see the panic in his eyes as he realized I wasn't playing around Melissa. Please, he started, but I cut him off. No, don't just tell me the truth. Joshua's face turned ashen. The moment I spoke, the silence between us was thick, hanging in the air like a suffocating fog. His mouth opened and closed as if he were trying to find the right words, but they wouldn't come. I could see it. The guilt, the fear, the realization that the truth had finally caught up with him. The man I once trusted with every piece of my heart was now standing in front of me, exposed, and I had no intention of making it easy for him to escape. Melissa, please. His voice trembled, and for a moment, I almost felt pity but it quickly vanished. You don't get to ask for my pity, Joshua. Not after everything I said. My voice steady, though it trembled with the weight of everything I was feeling. His eyes flickered with shame, and then slowly his gaze dropped to the floor. There was no defense left for him. He couldn't look me in the eye. I could see the weight of the lies settling heavily on him, crushing him in ways I hadn't thought possible. But it wasn't enough. It wasn't nearly enough. Tell me the truth. I pressed the words, a demand, not a plea. You and Amir. How long the room seemed to shrink as the words settled in. Joshua shifted uncomfortably, running his hand through his hair in a nervous gesture that had always been a signal of his discomfort. But there was no comfort now. There was only the stark reality of what he had done and the terrible toll it was about to take on everything we had. His voice cracked, but he still didn't look at me. It started a few months ago. It was never meant to be this way. Never meant to be what Joshua asked. My voice, rising now, never meant to betray me. Never meant to sleep with my best friend behind my back. The words were like daggers, cutting deeper with each one I spoke. I could feel the fury inside me, rising, coiling tighter, but I refused to let it completely consume me. I needed answers, not a release of my rage. As much as I wanted to scream, I had to hear him say it. I had to understand how deeply he had lied to me. I didn't want to hurt you, he said finally, his words coming out in a hushed, strained voice. It just happened. One thing led to another. It wasn't supposed to go this far. I felt a bitter laugh bubble up in my throat, but I stifled it. Wasn't supposed to go this far. I had no sympathy for him anymore. This wasn't some accident. It was a deliberate choice, a betrayal, and Amira. She had been there helping him destroy everything we had worked for. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. No, Joshua. Don't you dare try to spin this as some mistake. You chose this every time you lied to me. Every time you touched her, you made a choice. He stood there, his head hung in shame, but it wasn't enough. Nothing, he said, could undo the damage that had already been done. The truth was clear. He had crossed a line from which there was no return. I had given him everything, and he had shattered it. I'm sorry, Melissa, he whispered, his voice cracking. I don't know what came over me. It wasn't about you. It was about me and Amira. And I shook my head, cutting him off before he could continue his pathetic excuse. No, don't you dare make this about you. You're the one who chose to betray me. You're the one who thought it was okay to lie to my face day after day. You're the one who chose to make her a part of this. The reality of it all started to sink in deeper. He wasn't just some stranger who had hurt me. He was the man I had trusted with my life, my hopes and my dreams. I thought we were building something together, something unbreakable. But now all of that was gone. I never thought I would be the kind of person who would betray someone like Joshua. Said, his voice barely audible now, but I did. And I can't take it back. I can't undo the hurt I've caused you. His words sounded hollow to me like echoes in an empty room. I had heard enough of his excuses. I had heard enough of this remorse that didn't change anything. I needed him to see how much he had taken from me, how much he had stolen. I can't even look at you right now, I muttered, the bitterness in my tone unmistakable. My heart ached with the weight of it all, but I knew I had to. To be strong, I had to make a decision. I couldn't stay in this lie any longer. He took a tentative step toward me, but I held up a hand, stopping him in his tracks. No, don't come any closer. I was trembling now, not with anger, but with a deep, searing hurt. I can't believe you did this. I can't believe she did this. Joshua's face crumpled with guilt. I know I've ruined everything. I'll do whatever it takes to make it right. Just give me a chance. You've already had your chance, Joshua. I said, my voice quiet now, but firm. And you wasted it. You've betrayed me in the worst way possible. His head sank even lower. I could hear the quiet desperation in his voice, but it didn't change what had already happened. Nothing would. I'll never forgive you for this, whispered, though the words felt like daggers in my own heart. But it was the truth. I had to accept it. This was no longer a marriage. It was a betrayal that couldn't be fixed. And I'll never forgive her either. Joshua's eyes widened, and I could see the realization hit him hard. He had lost me, and there was no coming back from this. I don't know how to fix this, he murmured, his voice thick with regret. But it was too late. The damage had already been done, and no apology in the world could undo what had been broken. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew that Joshua and I had reached an irreversible point. The person I had loved, the person I had trusted, was gone. What was left was someone who had shattered everything we had built, and I couldn't live with that. I turned away from him, then unable to face him any longer. I didn't want to hear his apologies. I didn't want to listen to any more of his excuses. There was nothing left to say. I was done. As I walked away, I felt a cold sense of finality settle over me. I had been broken, but I would rebuild. I would find myself again despite the pieces Joshua had scattered across the floor, and one day I would move on. But for now, there was only silence. And that silence was the loudest thing I had ever heard. The silence that filled the space between Joshua and me was suffocating as I walked away from him. Each step felt like a decision, one I couldn't undo. I could feel the weight of everything crashing down. The life I thought I knew, the future I had envisioned, all crumbling into pieces. I couldn't look at him anymore. Not with the same love, not with the same trust. He had shattered everything in an instant. I walked into the next room, the tension still clinging to me. The walls felt like they were closing in, and I needed space more than I had ever needed it before. The shock hadn't worn off yet, but there was something else rising inside me, something I wasn't sure how to name it. was anger, it was betrayal. But above all, it was a deep sense of emptiness. How could he have done this? How could I have been so blind? My best friend, my husband? All of it felt like a cruel joke when I wasn't laughing at it. I took a deep breath and ran my hands through my hair. I needed to think, but I couldn't focus. The pain was too raw. I glanced over at my phone lying on the counter, a reminder of everything that had been exposed, and then something inside me shifted. What if there was a way to make him feel the hurt I was carrying? What if I could make him understand truly, understand the destruction he had caused? My heart was already broken. But there was a part of me deep down that wanted more than just his regret. I wanted him to feel the weight of this. I wanted him to know that his actions would come with consequences. I didn't want to lose myself in anger, but I couldn't pretend I wasn't angry. No matter how many times he apologized, no matter how broken he seemed. He had crossed a line that I could never ignore. He had humiliated me. He had betrayed me, and there was only one way to make him understand. I needed a plan. The idea that flickered in my mind wasn't born from some fleeting emotion. It was a cold, calculated reaction to the pain I had been forced to bear. A part of me felt justified. He had his fun with my best friend. Why shouldn't I do the same? But deep down, I knew this wouldn't bring me peace. It wouldn't fix what had been broken, but I wasn't interested in fixing things anymore. I just wanted to hurt him. I wanted him to see what it felt like, so I did what anyone in my position might do. I reached out to his closest friend, the one who had been with him through thick and thin, the one who had always treated me with kindness. His name was Ben. He was different from Joshua. More grounded, less flashy. And in a strange way, he reminded me of the man Joshua used to be. Before everything fell apart, I called Ben under the guise of wanting to talk about work. There was no need to make him suspicious. He agreed to meet me later that evening when we sat down at the restaurant, a place Joshua and I used to frequent. I couldn't help but feel a sick sense of satisfaction. I had planned this, and now it was happening. Ben greeted me warmly, his smile genuine. We exchanged pleasantries, but beneath the surface I was consumed by the plan. The more we talked, the more my nerves settled. This wasn't about Ben, it was about Joshua, about making him see me for once, not as his wife, not as his victim, but as a woman capable of making her own decisions. "What's going on, Melissa? You've seemed off lately." "Everything all right?" Ben asked. His eyes filled with concern. I smiled softly at first, then more confidently. "It's complicated. I'm just trying to figure out a few things." "Anything I can help with?" he asked. Leaning forward, his gaze steady, I looked at him for a moment, and then the decision came. I had to do this. I had to show Joshua in the most direct way possible the consequences of his actions. To my surprise, was receptive. I wasn't sure what I had expected, but I certainly hadn't anticipated him agreeing so easily to spend the evening together. Before long, I could see the shift in Ben's demeanor. He wasn't just being kind. He was intrigued, drawn into the moment in a way that felt strangely empowering. It wasn't a perfect plan, and deep down, I knew this wasn't the solution to my pain. But in that moment, it was the only thing I could control. We shared a few drinks, and I leaned in closer. The tension between us built, and I could feel a sick satisfaction bubbling inside me. He didn't resist. He didn't pull away. And just like that, it happened the next morning. I woke up feeling like I had made a mistake one. I wasn't sure I could undo. It wasn't the regret of my actions that hit me first, though it was the realization that I had crossed another line. That sick satisfaction I had felt the night before was replaced by emptiness. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't going to fix anything, if anything. It was just another complication I had created for myself, but there was no turning back now. I had done it. I had him, not in the way I thought would heal me, but in a way that would force him to finally feel something. And then the phone call came. Joshua's voice on the other end was hoarse, almost unrecognizable. His words were rushed, desperate. I know what you did." His voice cracked. "You don't have to do this. You don't have to hurt me like this." I swallowed, the knot in my throat tightening. "I'm not the one who hurt us, Joshua," I said, my voice calm but cold. "You did that. You made this happen." He fell silent for a moment, and when he spoke again, it was barely a whisper. "I've been such a fool, Melissa. I never should have. I never should have done any of it. Please, I'm begging you, don't do this." "You've already done it, Joshua. It's too late for apologies." I paused, feeling the weight of every word I was saying. "I'm done." The line went dead, and I realized then that I wasn't doing this to get him back. I was doing this to reclaim my power, to remind myself that I could still make decisions, still take control. In the end, I didn't need him to regret anything. I needed to move on, but the damage had been done, and there was no going back, Cal. The call ended abruptly, leaving the sharp silence in its wake. I held my phone in my hand for a long time, staring at the screen. My thoughts tangled in the chaos of what had just happened. Joshua's voice echoed in my ears. "Don't do this, don't hurt me like this." But it wasn't just about him anymore. It hadn't been for a while. I set the phone down slowly, my fingers trembling as I tried to make sense of the mess I had created. The anger, the hurt, the revenge. It had all spiraled into something I couldn't control in a twisted way. I had thought hurting him would somehow make me feel better. I had wanted him to understand, to feel the pain I had endured. But now, standing in the aftermath, I wasn't so sure it wasn't the revenge that was eating away at me. It was the reality that we had reached a point of no return. Nothing I did, no matter how much I tried to force him to feel. My pain would change what had been broken, what had been ruined. I had felt hollow for so long, but this emptiness felt even more suffocating. I glanced at my reflection in the mirror there. I was just a woman who had been betrayed by the man she loved, trying to find her way through the mess he had made. The woman who had once believed in the strength of her marriage, the woman who had fought for something real. But that woman was fading, disappearing in the wake of what had happened. I knew what I had to do. The decision that had been brewing deep inside me was finally clear. Divorce is time to let go. But the thought of saying those words, of finally admitting to myself that the life I had fought for was over, felt like a heavy weight on my chest. But what was the alternative? To stay? To pretend to keep playing this game, where we both pretended that nothing had changed? I had asked for honesty, for trust, and he had betrayed me with my best friend. There was no fixing it, no rebuilding it. This marriage was a facade, a broken promise, and I was tired of pretending otherwise. The phone buzzed again, another message from Joshua. It had been hours since our conversation, but his desperation hadn't dulled. "I don't want to lose you. Melissa, please, I'll do anything to make things right." The words stared back at me, hollow and empty. How could he think I'd fall for that? How could he possibly think that anything he said now could change what had already happened? I had given him my trust, my loyalty, and in return, he had shattered everything. What was left for us now? What was left for me? I felt a strange calm wash over me as I picked up the phone. My hands were no longer shaking. The decision had been made. This was the end. There was no going back. I dialed his number, the ringing filling the silence of my apartment. He picked up on the second ring, his voice crackling with emotion. "Melissa, please just let me explain. I know I messed up, but I don't want to hear it anymore." I interrupted, my voice steady. "There's nothing left to say? I'm done." There was a long, long pause on the other end of the line. I could almost hear the shock in his silence. His voice returned softer now, filled with a sense of disbelief. "Melissa, please don't do this. I love you. I never meant for any of this to happen. I can't lose you." I swallowed hard, forcing the words to come. "You already lost me, Joshua. You lost me the moment you decided to betray me." I took a deep breath. I can't stay with someone who doesn't respect me. I can't stay with someone who has broken me in ways I never thought possible. I'm done. I want a divorce. His voice cracked, but he didn't speak for a while. I could hear him breathing heavily, his emotions raw, but I refused to give in, the guilt creeping up my throat. This wasn't about guilt. This was about what I deserved. This was about finding my own peace, no matter how painful it was. "Melissa, please, I'll change. I'll do whatever it takes. Just give me a chance," he begged. I closed my eyes, the tears I had been holding back finally beginning to surface. But I didn't let them fall. I couldn't let them fall. Not now, it's too late for that, Joshua. You've had your chances and you chose her. You chose the lies, the betrayal. I can't forget that. I could feel the weight of my decision pressing down on me. But I was resolute. This was the end. There was no fixing this. There was no going back. You've destroyed everything we had. I said, the finality of the words hanging in the air. And now it's time to move on. The silence on the other end was deafening. I could hear his breath shallow and uneven. But there was nothing left for him to say. He couldn't fix this. He couldn't undo the damage. The trust was gone. The love was gone. Everything we had built together was gone. And no apology, no promise, no tears would change that. I'll have the papers sent to you, I said, my voice firm. You'll get them soon. I hope you find what you're looking for with her, but I'm done with that, I ended. The call. The weight of the moment sinking into my bones. The finality of it was overwhelming. I had chosen this path. I had chosen to take control of my life again. And though the pain was raw, though the hurt was still there, I knew I was doing the right thing. The divorce wasn't about punishing him. It was about freeing myself. Freeing myself from the lies, the betrayal, the hurt, freeing myself. From the man I thought I knew, the man I had trusted with my heart. I took a deep breath, standing in the quiet of my apartment, the walls that had once witnessed my laughter, now heavy with the echoes of my sorrow. But even in the quiet, even in the emptiness, there was something else, a spark of hope, a tiny flicker that despite everything I would rebuild, I would heal. And this time I would do it for myself. Joshua had made his choice, and now I was making mine. The days following the call felt like a blur, an unsettling quiet settling over my life. It was as if the world had paused, waiting for something, anything to happen. I hadn't seen Joshua in person since that conversation, but I could feel his presence everywhere. It was like a shadow hanging over me when I couldn't escape. I'd taken the step to end things, but now I was left to deal with the aftermath. The divorce papers came through quickly, just as I expected. It was a formality, really. The legal part didn't change anything about how I felt, empty, but free still as I signed my name on those papers. There was a part of me that couldn't help but feel the weight of it. This was final. There was no going back. We were done. What came next was both expected and surprising in its intensity. Joshua's obsession. It started subtly with messages, a string of texts, each one more desperate than the last. I miss you. Please, let's talk. I made a mistake. I'll change, I swear I will. I ignored every single one. But that didn't stop him. I'd wake up to a new message every morning. His words a reminder of the life I was trying to leave behind. I found myself staring at my phone, my fingers itching to reply, but I stopped myself. Every time I couldn't give in. Not now. Days passed, then weeks. His messages became more erratic. He started calling, leaving voicemail after voicemail. Please, Melissa. You have to believe me. I'm sorry. I need you. It was like he was trying to reel me back in. With each desperate plea, the man who once seemed so confident, so sure of himself, now sounded like a broken version of the person I had married. But the more he tried to contact me, the more I realized something. His obsession was not about love. It wasn't about wanting me back. It was about control. He couldn't stand the thought of losing me. Not because of what we shared, but because it was a blow to his ego. I could feel my strength building each time I resisted, each time I ignored him, each time I rejected his attempts to draw me back into his orbit. I felt more in control of my own life. It was empowering, and yet it was exhausting. The emotional toll of having to shut him out, of constantly battling his persistence, was draining. But I wasn't going to let him wear me down. One day, after a particularly long stretch of silence, he showed up at my door. I had just finished my morning coffee when I heard the knock. I froze, unsure of what to expect. My heart raced, but I steeled myself, telling myself that I could handle this, was done with him, but he didn't seem to understand that. When I opened the door there, he was Joshua, looking disheveled, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep, his face a mixture of desperation and sorrow. I stood there, taking in the sight of him. He looked like a man who had lost everything, and in many ways, he had. But I wasn't going to let myself be manipulated again, Melissa, he whispered, his voice cracked. Please just listen. I need you to hear me out. I know I screwed up. I can't live with myself. Knowing that I lost you, I can't let you go. I stepped back, shaking my head. Joshua, I don't need you to explain. You've had your chances and you threw them away. Not your second chance. I'm not your backup plan. I'm done, his face twisted with anguish. You don't understand. I can't lose you. I love you. I wanted to shout at him to tell him that love wasn't enough, that love didn't excuse betrayal, that love didn't erase the pain he had caused. But instead I stood there silent, letting the weight of his words wash over me. I'm not the same person anymore, I said, my voice low but firm. And neither are you. The man I loved is gone, and what's left is someone who doesn't respect me, someone who doesn't deserve me. He opened his mouth to say something, but I cut him off. You don't get to talk to me like that anymore. I'm not the woman you knew. Joshua, I'm stronger now. I've learned that I deserve better than this. His face crumpled, and for a moment I almost felt sorry for him, but then I remembered everything, his betrayal, the lies, the way he had torn apart my life, without even thinking twice. And that sadness for him quickly faded into something else. I never wanted to hurt you, he said, his voice small now. You didn't want to hurt me, I laughed. Though it didn't feel like a laugh. You've done nothing but hurt me. And the worst part, you're still trying to make it about you. You're still trying to pull me back into your mess. He took a step forward, but I held up my hand, stopping him. Don't, I said, my voice sharp. Anu, you don't get to come in here and make me feel guilty. I'm not your punching bag. I'm not your emotional crutch. You broke this, Joshua, and now you need to deal with the consequences for a long time. He didn't say anything. His shoulders slumped and he looked defeated, but I didn't feel sympathy anymore. I didn't feel anything for him except a quiet resolve. I think it's time for you to leave, I said, my voice steady, unwavering. I've given you enough of my life. I'm taking it back. He looked like he was about to argue, but he didn't. Instead, he turned and walked away, leaving me standing at the door. Feeling a strange sense of finality, the door clicked, shut behind him, and I stood there, the silence filling the space. It wasn't relief, I felt. It wasn't peace. It was something else, a mixture of strength and sadness, of knowing that I had finally truly taken control of my life. This was my moment. Joshua might have tried to keep me in his world, but I was done with that world. I had built my own, and in that world I was free. Free from the lies, free from the pain, and free from him. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight in my chest loosen for the first time in weeks. It was a long road ahead, but I was ready for it. This was the beginning of my life, not with him, but without him. And for the first time in a long while, I felt hope. After closing the door behind Joshua, I stood still for a moment, as if waiting for something to happen. The emptiness of the room seemed to press in on me, but this time it felt different. It wasn't a crushing weight, it was a space, an open canvas where I could start over, where I could finally breathe without the burden of his presence hanging over me. I slowly turned away from the door and walked across the room, feeling the faintest sense of freedom. My apartment, once a place where memories of him and the life we had built lingered in every corner, now felt like my own. My hands shook not from fear, but from the sheer weight of the decision I had made. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I was drowning. I felt like I had surfaced. I didn't know where to start. How could I begin again after everything? But the thought of it didn't seem so daunting anymore. The weight of the betrayal, the pain, and the suffocating guilt that had held me hostage for months was lifting. It wasn't gone completely, but it was retreating bit by bit, leaving behind a glimmer of something I hadn't allowed myself to feel for a long time. Hope. I sank into the couch, staring blankly at the wall. The silence in my apartment was deafening, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was peaceful. This was my space, my sanctuary. And it was time to make it truly mine again. I let the days stretch out before me, taking each one at a time. The first few were filled with a sort of numbness, as if my body had yet to catch up with my mind. But soon I found myself returning to things I had put on hold. Small things like cooking a meal. I liked reading a book I had forgotten about, or going for long walks without the constant worry about what Joshua was doing or saying. I rediscovered pieces of myself that I had lost along the way. Then there were the moments of reflection, moments when the memories of what had happened with Joshua would sneak up on me. The betrayal, the heartache, the lies. But instead of feeling consumed by those memories, I allowed myself to feel them without letting them define me. I understood now that those moments were just chapters in my life, but they didn't have to be the whole story. One afternoon, I walked past the small cafe I used to visit with Joshua. I hesitated for a moment, feeling that familiar knot in my stomach, but then I smiled. I stepped inside, ordering a coffee. Just the way I used to felt like a small victory. Something so simple yet so significant, I could enjoy my life without the shadow of betrayal looming over it. I wasn't his anymore, and I didn't need him to validate me. Weeks turned into months, and slowly the anger I had felt began to soften. It was still there, lingering, but it no longer consumed me. I realized I didn't need to hate Joshua to heal. I didn't need to hold on to the pain to move on. It wasn't about erasing what had happened, but about accepting it, learning from it, and using it to grow stronger. But growth wasn't always linear. There were days when I still found myself questioning my choices. Was I too harsh? Had I been too quick to close the door on everything we had? But then I would remind myself of the truth: no one else could define my worth but me. I had chosen to stand up for myself, to break free from the lies and manipulation. And in doing so, I had reclaimed my power one evening as I sat in my apartment looking out the window at the city lights. I realized how far I had come. The woman I had been, the one who had once believed in Joshua, in their love, in their future, felt like a distant memory. I was different now, stronger, more resilient. I had rebuilt my world, brick by brick, and I was finally starting to believe that it was enough. A soft knock on the door pulled me from my thoughts. I stood, my heart momentarily skipping a beat before walking to the door. When I opened it, I was surprised to see my friend Rachel standing there, her face lighting up when she saw me. "I hope I'm not interrupting," she said with a playful grin. "I thought we could grab dinner and catch up, just as girls." I smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile. That sounds perfect. As we sat at the small table in a cozy restaurant, chatting about everything and nothing, I felt a warmth spread through me. Rachel was my anchor, my reminder that the world wasn't as dark as it had felt during the worst moments of my life. She had been there for me when I needed her the most. And now with each passing day, I was learning to stand on my own again. "Melissa," she said, her voice soft, "I'm proud of you. I know it hasn't been easy, but you've come so far." Her words hit me unexpectedly. I hadn't realized how much I had changed until someone else pointed it out. I had spent so much time focusing on surviving, on pushing through the pain, that I hadn't noticed how much I had grown. I wasn't the same person who had cried herself to sleep for months after Joshua's betrayal. I was someone new, someone stronger, someone more whole. "Thank you," I replied quietly, my voice thick with emotion. "I'm still learning, but I think I'm finally starting to understand who I am again," and in that moment, I knew it was true. I had spent so much of my life defining myself by the relationships I had with others, especially Joshua, that I had forgotten who I was on my own. But now, with each passing day, I was rediscovering the woman I had once been. The woman had buried beneath the weight of love and loss, and it felt good as the night wore on. I realized something else: I wasn't in a rush anymore. There was no urgency to move on or get over it. There was only the present, only the quiet but steady growth that was unfolding within me. I wasn't defined by the end of my marriage. I wasn't defined by betrayal or loss. I was defined by my own resilience, my own journey, and my own strength. When Rachel and I parted ways, I walked back to my apartment, my mind calm, my heart at peace. I knew that I had a long road ahead, but I was no longer afraid of what it would bring. I had learned how to stand on my own, how to be my own source of strength, and how to move forward no matter what. This was my new beginning, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I needed to be. The weeks that followed my night out with Rachel felt different. I had stepped over the threshold of recovery, and now I was walking through a doorway that I had once thought was locked forever. I didn't expect this kind of peace so soon. The pain, the anger, it wasn't gone, but it no longer controlled me. I was no longer merely surviving. I was living. And with that came the realization that I had the power to shape my future, not just heal from the past. I woke up one morning with the rare sense of clarity. My body no longer weighed down by the constant exhaustion that had plagued me since the split. The phone sat on my bedside table, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel compelled to check it. No messages from Joshua, no missed calls. There was just the quiet hum of the morning, the soft light creeping through the blinds. It felt like the world was moving on with or without me, but this time, I wasn't afraid of being left behind. I stepped into the kitchen, my bare feet pressing against the cool tiles, and began to make coffee. My coffee not the kind we used to share. I took in the small soothing ritual, letting the warmth of the cup fill my hands, knowing that I had earned this moment of peace. Each sip tasted like a promise to myself. To my future, I had started a new routine. Nothing drastic, just small things that reminded me that I could still make choices for myself. I spent mornings at the gym, working out, not just my body, but my mind. Letting go of the anger, the hurt, the resentment, I reconnected with old friends, the ones who had always been there, even when I hadn't been able to see them, through the fog of my marriage. We laughed, we reminisced, and slowly my social world began to fill in the empty spaces that Josh's presence had once dominated. But what mattered most was the change inside me. I had let go of the constant need for validation from others, especially from someone like Joshua. I realized that before all of this, I had placed too much of my identity in our relationship. I had let myself be defined by the man I loved, by the life we had built, and when that life crumbled, so did I. It took time to recognize that beyond the relationship I was still me. I was still capable of joy, of success, of building a future, and no one, not even Joshua, could take that away from me as the weeks passed. I found myself more open to the idea of moving forward, of meeting someone new, not to replace what I'd lost, but to share something authentic. Yet the thought didn't rush me. I was in no rush. I had learned that love, the right kind, would come when it was meant to. There was no need to force it. One afternoon, a message popped up on my phone, and it wasn't from Joshua. It was from a colleague, Michael, who I'd worked with on a few projects. We'd exchanged pleasantries before, but never anything personal. His message was simple. "Hey, I hope you're doing well. Would you like to grab coffee sometime? I'd love to catch up." I stared at the message for a long moment, my fingers hovered over the screen. It had been a while since I had opened myself up to anything resembling romance, but the message felt different, felt casual, friendly, no pressure. I was at a point in my life where I was finally comfortable with myself, and I realized that if I wanted to, I could explore this without it overshadowing my healing process. I typed out a reply. "Sure, coffee sounds nice." It wasn't a promise of anything more, but it was a step, and in that moment I realized something significant. I wasn't just moving forward in my life. I was embracing it. I wasn't running from the past. I was letting it go. Every choice I made now felt like an opportunity to reclaim parts of myself that I had buried. The fear of being hurt again was there, but it didn't paralyze me anymore. It was just another part of the journey. The coffee date with Michael was easy, comfortable. Even we spoke about work, about hobbies, and about life in general. There was no awkwardness, no expectation. It felt like two people getting to know each other without the burden of history, weighing them down as the conversation flowed. I realized how much I had missed those simple human connections, no strings attached, just the freedom to enjoy someone's company afterwards. We said our goodbyes, and I felt an unfamiliar sense of peace. There was no rush, no pressure to make anything more of it, but I didn't close the door either. I wasn't sure where this would go, but for the first time in a long while, I wasn't afraid to see where it might lead in the weeks that followed. I continued to explore life on my own terms. I found new hobbies, started traveling a bit, and worked on my career with a focus I hadn't had before. My days no longer revolved around the drama of my past. I took back control, and with each passing day, I felt stronger, more certain that I had made the right decision by walking away from my marriage. Joshua's attempts to re-enter my life became fewer and fewer. After that last confrontation, I think he finally understood that I was no longer the woman he had known. I wasn't going to accept the scraps he was offering. I deserved more, and I was going to get it on my own terms. His calls stopped, the messages faded, stopped the whole kahao, away into nothing, and I was okay with that. In fact, I welcomed the silence. There was one final moment that cemented my closure came unexpectedly. One evening when I was out with friends, I saw him across the street, walking with someone else, someone new. For a moment, I felt a pang in my chest, but it wasn't the familiar ache of heartbreak. It was just a simple realization he was moving on too, and so was I the next few. Months went by in a blur of personal victories, small and large. I became more involved in my work, achieving things I hadn't thought possible. Just a year ago, I made new friends, deepened old relationships, and found peace in my solitude, but I also allowed myself to open up to new experiences. New people without the burden of fear, holding me back one day. As I sat in the park with my coffee watching the world pass by, I felt something shift deep within me. I was no longer the woman trapped in her own heartbreak, struggling to heal. I was a woman who had faced her pain head-on and emerged stronger, more confident. I had learned how to live for myself, not for anyone else. And that in itself was the greatest victory. I had finally turned the page of my story. The old chapter had closed, and the new one full of possibility and hope had begun.